Well, the last time we talked, I'm not going to try and remember the three congregations that you did your student internship. All I remember, as you said, that they were the extreme west of Great Britain. So I leave it at that. It was a place of good shepherds and a lot of sheep. And then you moved into Dunblane. That was your first pastorate and the difficulty that you spoke of there in relation to the massacre at that time. But after 7 years, you had mentioned that you had felt a sense of having to move on. So what then transpired in your life that took you to Toronto?
I think it was a Tuesday night, if my memory serves me correctly. I get this phone call from a chap called Peter Morrison. Peter had been a fellow elder with me in the St Vincent Street congregation in Glasgow, but he was also the secretary of one of the church committees. And this was him on the phone to say that Toronto were looking for a pastor, and they had been in touch with him to contact a number of folk to ask them if they would consider coming out to Toronto, say for 6 weeks or so, to bring your family with a view to a call to moving to Toronto. I was sort of taken aback by that. When I told Alison, what the call was about, again, she was surprised. We thought about it, prayed about it, and I got back on the phone a few days later to Peter and said, yeah, we're happy to go across to Toronto for a little while to see. Well, again, in God's providence, the amazing thing was we ended up in Toronto during the first anniversary of the Dunblane massacre. We were actually just so thankful for that. We weren't in Dunblane, that first anniversary and all the memories and so on it brought back, and especially just being so fresh in everybody's experience. So that was a blessing. The one thing that was very different was we came out here, it was February, and we were here from February to April of '97, and it was extremely cold. We'd never experienced anything like it. In fact, it was the first weekend we decided to go out a walk on Saturday afternoon. And we're walking along to the local mall, and we're wondering, why nobody seems to be walking. And we noticed that when people were driving by in cars, they're sort of looking at us as though, And then it was later on we realised, yeah, we were the only folk out walking because it was like minus 15 or and we realised, yeah, you don't do that. In Glasgow, an inch of snow and the whole city comes to a grinding halt. Here we're talking about a couple of feet, and we were amazed. Life just kept going on. It was so very different that way. So we were here for the 6 weeks, and it was a blessed time for the family and for Alison. It was nice just to be in another country to see how things are done and so on. When we left in April, actually what happened was I'd also received a call from the Ayr congregation, and I told the folks here in Toronto about this. I was up front with them, and they'd said, well, we want to call you as well. So by the time I got back to Scotland, I had two calls to consider. In the morning, I would say, yeah, I have to stay in Dunblane. The afternoon, I'd be praying and not have to go to Ayr, and then the evening, and not have to go to Toronto. I was so confused. Well, as time went on, and with various conversations and so on, it looked as though, and I felt on the basis of a number of things, that Toronto was the place that God was wanting me to go to. Alison was hesitant, mainly because of the schooling. The children, as I say, had been going to a little school 3 miles outside of Dunblane, and there was only 30 children in the whole school from grade 1 to grade 7. So they were basically getting almost one-on-one education teacher-wise. It was excellent for them. And Alison was concerned. She really liked the school, the teacher. That week, I had to go to Presbytery in Glasgow, and I had to give Presbytery my decision with regard to the whole situation. And I was anxious, naturally, concerning Alison, because I thought, I don't want to move, especially say to Toronto, if my wife isn't totally behind it and for it. Well, that evening, the phone went, the Monday evening, and here was the head teacher, the headmistress, as you would call them in Scotland, phoning to let us know there had been a meeting of Stirling Region Council, the Education Committee, that afternoon. And because of falling numbers, and also what had happened since the massacre, they had built another elementary school on the other side of Dunblane. So now there was no need for little schools, and the council, for that reason and financial reasons, decided in the summer, Kenbuck Elementary School will shut. That's it. And it's almost as though God was basically saying to Alison, as she said it herself, well, the concern that you've got, Alison, has been taken away from you, you know? And so on that basis, we both said, yeah, Toronto. Went to the presbytery on the Tuesday evening, gave my reasons and so on for going to one place, not staying in one place, and not going to another place.
That was a very gracious providence the Lord gave you, or gave
Oh,
Alice.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
find that, I mean, you find that, and this is always a wrestle in life, what is the Lord's will?
yep,
How do I know? And
yep.
of course, you've said that you use the Word of God, and you mentioned earlier, I think it was in the last interview we had, godly common sense. And it's that combination of knowing the Word of God and the directive of the Word of God, and then having the patience to wait with what godly common sense until the Lord clearly reveals it.
It was quite astounding, really, Andrew. We still actually talk about it from time to time. Do you remember that night? Yeah. And so it encourages you for the future. We know he'll help us in the coming years. So we came out to Canada in August of 97. This coming August, I'll be here 24 years. 24 years have just whizzed by. Eldest Mark, he was 9 when we came here. Rebecca was 8, Chloe was 7, and Abigail was 2. And Mark, the first year or two here, oh, he was not happy and not happy with me. And I used to feel bad about it because he would say, "Oh, you brought us here, and I've left all my friends." And of course, sport is different. He'd been used to soccer, football, and so on. Sometimes I would feel bad. Oh, my son is not happy here. So anyway, he would have been about 16. So about 7 years, I got a phone call from Scotland, and it was from St Vincent Street, my old congregation, Douglas McMillan's congregation. And basically, they were vacant. Would I consider going back and consider taking a call from them? I chatted with them and I said, well, give me a few days and I'll get back to you. So I got all the family downstairs that night and I said, I've just had a phone call and it says, we could be back in Scotland within about 2 months. I said, I'm just letting you know, there's a possibility of going back. And Mark immediately said, well, if you're going back yourselves. I looked at him, I said, whoa, I said, that's a different, bit different from how you were when we came here. And at that point, you're a typical teenager, he didn't look at me. And I says, why? I says, if I decide we feel it's God's will for us, I said, to go back, I said, why would you want to stay here? He said, there's far more opportunities here. At that time, that's the way he thought about it. But it was quite, interesting just to change from 9 years of age till he was 16. And lo and behold, now, he's a Toronto firefighter, he's married, he's got a little daughter, there's another child on the way and so on. And again, we just sometimes kid each other on about that. I said, do you remember, Mark, the days when you had no time for your father?
Well, you're not unique in that situation. It is quite a challenge for a minister to move even within the nation he's in, but to move international, it can be a challenge. And we do ask a lot of our children to go with us. That's not always thought about as much as the challenge is for the minister himself.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear how they account of the Lord's hand in bringing you to Toronto. Next time, we'll pick up on the story of your 24 years coming next August in Toronto and see how the Lord has preserved you and helped you and been your guide and been your shepherd as you have under-shepherded the congregation there. So good to talk to you. We'll talk again.